Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wisdom from the Field. We have very special guests today. First time having shliach and shlucha together. Rabbi Peretz, Rabbi Chanie Chein. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're
It's
very
our
welcome.
pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So let's dive right in. I know you guys run a program or programs for shluchim. I think it's called M54. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What is it? What is it focused on?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, M54, I'll just start by explaining what that means. It says M54, the Institute for Insourcing Avodah Pnimis. And 54 is the gematria of 3 times chai. And the idea is that when one person engages with another person, another chai, in a deep, authentic, meaningful way, a third chayis, a new chayis emerges, which is the magic of 54. And essentially, it's the idea of a Fabrengen, which is a different model of learning. So there's the conventional model of learning, which is learning a mimer, learning a text, and absorbing that idea. And in Chabad, particularly, was introduced a new model of learning called the Fabrengen. And the Fabrengen essentially is a realization that learning a text isn't sufficient. And the purpose of Chassidus, and it's in Hayom Yom today, is about noticing the parts of you that are not good and changing it. And meaning to say, to take these big esoteric ideas of the Tanya and Chassidus and apply it to your personal life in the realities that are very much uniquely yours, your Ra, and transforming that. And learning something is not sufficient. You have to develop the ability and the skills of how to apply that learning into your day-to-day life. And there is very different. See, you and I could sit in a shir together and we could learn the same mimer, but the application for you will look very different than the application for me. And the way you apply it I can't learn from that for myself. I need to figure it out for myself. That essentially is where the Fabrengen comes in. It's a space of learning, of taking the ideas, combining it with an authentic exploration of your personal realities, and merging the two together. Essentially, what we developed over here at M54 is this learning model, is the integration of Hasidic ideas, Yiddishkeit, into the personal life, and which is something that we found that there doesn't exist enough of. And we began it with alumni, Brandeis alumni, at the beginning of COVID, and then it spilled over into the area of shluchim and shluchos. And I'll let Chanie maybe speak a little more to that, how that happened, because she was the initiator and of that.
Yeah, sure. Beautiful. Please.
I have felt for a long time that while we all move out on shlichus with a lot of passion and idealism, and that is enough to get us out there to do the amazing, wonderful, unbelievable start to shluchim's lives. However, that does not sustain an engaging, vibrant connection to shluchos. For we gain experience. We discover what kind of community or non-existent community we've entered. Our marriage grows. We begin having one child and then another. And the passion and idealism remain as a value, but it doesn't help us respond to the emerging demands, responsibilities, challenges that we engage or that confront us. And it also doesn't necessarily consider relationship in shluchos, which is marriage and parenting, and also a relationship with the community. And so I wanted to create a space where we could deepen and mature the kinds of conversations we have around shluchos, where the answer isn't speak to someone who's done it longer than you, or speak to your mashpia, or learn a mimer, which are all values, but I wanted to see if we can have a conversation with each other without trying to convince ourselves or convince away any of the challenges. And that's essentially what I did. I reached out to my colleagues and experimented.
Wow. You mentioned before, this is since COVID, was this 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah, we started with alumni and then found it to be extraordinarily meaningful where the content of the conversation isn't text. The content of conversation is life. So I know you mentioned that Yom Yom has the idea of what isn't good inside of us, but life is that, but also what is good inside of us that maybe is not finding expression in our shlichus, for example, now that we're on shluchos for a decade or 2 decades. The Chanie that moved out as a young 20-year-old, in my young 20s, I've gained experience, and I need to understand how that is challenged by my shluchos, as well as how can I find expression in my role with my growing experience.
Wow. Wow, beautiful. So, um, you've created the space, right, to have these real life conversations with your fellow shluchim. What, over the few years that you've been doing this, what have you found has been the response, or not the response, the result, the fruits of those conversations, from your experiences?
So I will add, though, that it's not simply having conversations about these realities, which in a certain sense it started that way, but it's more than that. It's of actually learning skills and tools with which to shift our focus away from what we call outsourcing. And the idea of outsourcing is, we came onto shlichus, and I think it's everybody came onto shlichus in our early 20s for the most part, mid or second half of the 20s, as a result of ideas and values that were given to us, were taught to us. Our mashpiyim, chassidus, our community, our family, and that's what drove us. In a certain sense, we all go on shlichus. The place where we go to is irrelevant to a great degree. We go because we want to be shluchim of the Rebbe, and we want to do the shluchus. To be where we happen to be in Brandeis is quote unquote circumstantial, hashgacha pratis. But it's not that I have any association with Brandeis or with Waltham that made me any qualified to do this. It's just hashgacha pratis brought us here. For the most part, most shluchim, it is that way, and we call that outsourcing. In other words, it's something that came from the outside. There comes a point in time after 10 years of shlichus where you need to shift your center of decision making exclusively from the outside and bring it into the inside. And the inside means your reality, your nefesh elikis, your nefesh abahamis, what makes you distinctive, what makes me Peretz, and what makes her Chanie, and what makes you Tzvi. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that we particularly learn how to do, because you have to, in a certain sense, you need to figure this out for yourself. So what we've been doing over the past in the different cohorts is creating tools and skills, or a pedagogy for Avodah Pnimis. How do we practice Avodah Pnimis? So we hear Avodah Pnimis a lot, and we know it going back, from the beginning of the. But what is a way of a process, a system, a seder of how to do it? And one of the things we've developed and what we teach is this system and this process of practicing Avodah Pnimis, so that then people could then apply it into their shlichus, be it into their personal elements of their shlichus, which is their marriages, their raising their children, their how they daven, or their organizational, which is also another important part of their shlichus. They're communal.
Right. Wow. Could you bring this maybe a little more alive? Like, what is a real life example of that? Like the distinction of, you said outsourcing, insourcing. What would be a real life example of that playing out?
Sure. And it's a good question you ask, because what you asked, like, what's the reaction of shluchim and shluchos? So all this sounds lovely, or maybe not even that. It sounds sometimes a little bit like, what are you doing? So a real life example really helps. And with that, I'll give one. And I'll also say that a big element that's necessary for Avodah Pnimis is curiosity. And so when someone stays in the conversation about what in the world is Avodah Pnimis, and have I ever tasted it, and do I do it, and what does it look like, and did I do it as a bacher or a high schooler or a seminary girl, and have I not experienced it recently, that's necessary for Avodah Pnimis. So I want that to be the setting of a real life example, because you also asked what's the fruits, right? Which is also tends to be a really quick question that we find answered. Like, even from the participants who are curious, I'll be like, okay, I want to change in my life. Some of them know what they want and some of them don't. But one needs curiosity, and one needs, it's founded on the value of derech harucha. So a real life example, yeah, we can circle back to that if you want.
Yeah, sure.
But a real life example is, I'll speak from a shluchos perspective, and they really vary, which is really speaks to the richness of this. But she has been on shluchos for quite a number of years and works with a young adult community, and has done the programming and cares deeply for her community. And yet what she's looking for is a flow, a chayas in the way she interacts with each program, with each event, and also to be able to pull back and see the bigger picture of, okay, what is having an impact? How does one leave my event? What's the post results for them? And it's not, so it becomes, she wants to move away from like, what's on my calendar? What do I need to get done? To what could I be as a shlucha with my experience now, with I know what works, what doesn't, and with my deep care, what could it look like for me to redesign months of programming? A derech katsara would be like, yeah, sit down with someone who has a flow, and I'll give you some ideas, and here's what you could do. Or another derech katsara, by the way, is what's a flow? I mean, every yid matters. Who cares about a theme that you're looking for, or a post engagement? If they come to your event, that matters, and it doesn't really matter, right? So we have understood that those are really short-term, limited responses, because the shlucha is seeking something that will bring her chayas, and that will also naturally impact her programming, and it will be much more effective. And so over the course of the months, we've created a framework, and this is within the pedagogy, which means how to teach something, called the solar system. It's a little kitschy, SOULAR. And it has three elements to what we deeply have learned and understood that Avodah Pnimis requires, but it's not a recipe. Meaning it's not up to me and Paris to tell anybody how to do their Avodah Pnimis, but it holds these three elements, which are very general: noticing, unpacking, and doing. Noticing is when you start gathering moments in your life. The key is with curiosity and no judgment, which, by the way, sounds much easier than practiced. No judgment, both good and bad. Like, oh, this was an amazing morning, I didn't yell at my kids. No, this is what happened this morning. This is how I spoke to this child. This is what he or she ate for breakfast. This is how they left to school. And noticing, let's say, what's happening within me or around me for a number of weeks. When someone is able to do that, they can then discover patterns. My Monday mornings are this. When I speak to my husband, it's this. When I design this program, I'm noticing this. And they lift themes from that. There could be a theme of anxiety. Like, I'm not sure this will work. I'm not sure my kid's in the right school. There could be themes of, I'm loving this, but I'm only seeing it in this part of my life. How do I bring it into other? And of course, there's only just 2 out of the hundreds of themes or thousands of themes. The second part is understanding what one's theme is about. What is my uncertainty about? What is I'm noticing that a lot of shluchim and shluchos, their worth is their productivity. So what is that about? And there's another series of tools and frameworks with which we offer. Again, it's an offering for shluchim and shluchos to see, okay, what is my theme really about? They go through layers. And then finally, they get to an insight that was born out of them. Nobody gave it to them. It's their like pirkei de tzvi. Like you came up.
Who are you,
with your
Aimer?
own- Yeah. Who are you? Like, right. Who are you, Aimer? Now, this could be so obvious to someone else, but that's not your wisdom. You came up with it because you experienced it. So we're very quick. The derech tzara is to give someone the quote on the mug, the text from the Rebbe, the letter from the Rebbe. Like, here's what the Rebbe says. But those are all thin ideas. Someone came up with their own insight. And now the final part is doing. We all know, as Chassidim especially, Ma'aseh hu ha'ikar. We can't just talk, can't just theorize. We actually have to start doing, but we expand the depth of doing, which makes it into an experimentation, which is, what would you like to do differently that you could experiment and notice, again, circling back without judgment, how it's going? What's in place that you could actually experiment? What do you still need to shift to do? And so this shlucha is experiencing, and I just got off the phone with her today, actually. She picked a specific program to experiment with this idea of bringing both herself to connect to the program more, and more importantly, she's realizing the weight she put on her and her husband, which is, we need to get this right. We want people to really, we want Yiddishkeit and Torah to be a value to them. But she's realizing she can't make it a value for them. So what could she do in this program that allows them to find their own voice and to share what is valuable for them in this program? And so she's beginning to design an element in her program which really brings their voice in it. And she's so excited now because now she's connecting with them. That's a small, or not so small, but an accurate screenshot into what Avodah Pnimis could look
Wow. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So tell me if I'm understanding you. So growing up on shlichus, I've been in this world for my whole life, but like there's a way of operating in which you can be, just doing, going on, going, there's so much to do and so much, demands to be met that you could just be going without even like pausing for a minute to look, where am I going? What's working, what's not working on a, hashpah level, what's working, what's not working on a, personal, relationship, family level, on an internal level. And just taking a moment to pause and look, inside and look around creates that space for insight and more meaningful change. Did I catch that accurately?
Yes.
Or did
What do you
I miss
think?
something?
Yes, but you're
Did I oversimplify it?
you simplify in a sense. It's pausing and looking around, and you're simplifying it by saying, oh, it's just as simple as like, stopping at the gas station and filling up your car with gas. In fact, it's actually in some ways working against our natural tendencies. There's actually a reason why we're not doing it. And it's not because we don't have time. There's something serving us in continuing the way we're doing.
So the value that you said about doing is so right. It's like, it's so accurate, and it in certain ways better than, not better, but for a long time, right? If you grew up on shluchos, and you know what it's like as a child to experience that kind of home. And it's a huge value, right? But it's serving us, like Peretz said.
So to stop and pause is not as simple as stopping, like I said, at a 7-Eleven to pick up a drink, but it's actually working against our nature, working against, I'll say, our nefesh habahamis, because this call of doing liberates us from actually paying attention to what's working or not. Are we being effective? Or actually to require us to pay attention to, are we really putting our neshama, our souls into it, or are we thinning out, burning out, and feeling a sense of overload? Now, the point that Chanie was saying here, and this is, I think, one of the chidushim, and what we bring introducing with M54 and Avodah Pnimis, is that the conventional response to challenges and overload on shlichus or overload on anything is, okay, it's not working. What should you do? Go learn a mimer. What should you examine? You should examine the mimer and go to the mimer. What we're saying is, go to the mimer, sure. But actually, what you should also be doing is going and looking at what you're doing. Maise. There's this idea in Chassidus, Seif Maise Machshava Tchila. Maise is not simply an outgrowth of Machshava, but actually Maise carries within it an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of information and data, more than Machshava and more than Dibur. Maise, the deeds that we do, they hold a truth that nothing that is greater than our intentions. And what we're introducing is the skills and the framework, the skills, the space to study the Maise in the first part of noticing, deepening our understanding of it in the unpacking, and then bringing change into the Maise, and then once again noticing and unpacking it. And it's a spiral which you're constantly engaged in. This Avodah Pnimis model is an ongoing, it's a skill, and it's an art that you have to constantly be engaged in, almost like dancing the ballet or playing the piano.
What if someone doesn't want to dance or play the piano?
So then they get into this stuckness, and then they're not.
So yeah, I wanted to actually ask, I think this addresses what you're mentioning, Chanie, is like, what is the cost of not, I use the word slowing down, but, doing this process, of noticing and unpacking, etc.
That's a phenomenal question. So we use an image. It's the train metaphor. It's helpful. So, pictures and metaphors can be helpful in really grounding something. So, the Nefesh Bahamas that Peretz was saying earlier, we directly connect to Mitzrayim, which is the idea that is it 4/5 of the Yidden didn't leave Mitzrayim?
Yeah.
Right? It's more than it's more than
80% didn't leave, right? V'chamushim, next week's parsha. 1/5 left.
Right, 1/5 left. Yeah.
1/5 left. So it's more than any of us are comfortable with. And there's 3 of us in the room. Which one of us would actually leave Mitzrayim? Now, everyone likes to think it's them. And there's research done, and medically also, when a doctor tells, I believe it's 6 or 7 people who have a disease, they will die within a shorter amount of time if they don't make changes. How many actually make changes? Again, much less than we think. I believe it's 1. And we all like to think
one out of
or 7, I believe.
Oh, wow.
It's much. It makes us squirm because right now there's 3 of us in the room and maybe none of us. You know what I mean, or what? So that answers your question. Is most people actually, or not most, many don't want to dance the ballet. And what was your other example? Play the piano. It's not a perfect example, but most of us don't want to do Avodah Pnimis because we make our Mitzrayim, we make our habits work for us. And they serve us. They keep us in this kind of homeostasis, which is a biological term, but we apply it here. It keeps us alive. We get up every day, we breathe, we find moments of joy, we find moments of connection, but we're not thriving and we're not evolving. Geulah is about thriving and evolving and growing and thinking deeper and it's more expansive. That requires a shift away from galus, and I would say a shift away from a shift towards Avodah Pnimis. And I know you like the pasuk where it says in Mitzrayim.
It's in this week's parsha, and the Rebbe actually refers to in the Maimer Bat as the tzava. What is kaitzer ruach, and what's the opposite of kaitzer ruach, and what's the opposite of Avodah Kasha? The kaitzer ruach is the narrowness of spirit. Okay, what is the opposite of that? Harchavas haruach, expansiveness of spirit. And the opposite of Avodah Kasha means is heavy work, but doesn't mean not hard work. The work could be hard, but it's light. When you have Harchavas haruach, then the Avodah is Avodah Kala. While Shamuel Moshe, what does Moshe represent? Moshe represents geulah. Moshe represents not, what was Mitzrayim about? Mitzrayim was about Chinam, right? We liked Mitzrayim. I don't know, it's in Baalei, I forgot which parsha it is. They missed Mitzrayim because there everything was easy, everything was free. We missed that. There's a certain comfort, and geulah, going out of Mitzrayim, is challenging, and for that you need harchavas haruach, and which leads to the Avodah Kala. That is an Avodah Pnimis that only 1/5 of Bnei Yisrael are willing to do, but that's our shluchim particularly. Not to mention every yid, it's a calling to engage in that, and not get stuck in the. Now here's one more thing: not get stuck in the models of our childhood and adolescence. The way we understood what it means to be a yid, the way we understand what it means to be learning when we were children, adolescents, is a model that applies to that part of our lives. When we were young, when we didn't have life experience, when we weren't accountable for ourselves. We were just absorbing from our teachers, from our mentors, from our community, which is very important. Very, very important to do it at that point in life. As we get older, as we move into adulthood, the Avodah needs to shift. The problem is, or the challenge is, that at that point in time, we're alone. We're not part of any institution. We're not part of any framework with which we could learn it. We're each in our own,
But we're learning it though from the outside,
but
from the community.
Yes. Yeah. What we're trying to create, what we're creating over here, is a space and an institution, and a ma'isa that actually teaches that skill.
Continued growth, continued learning.
Yes.
Beautiful. I would love to narrow a little more on that, but I just want to go back to my question of the cost. What I heard both of you share is in different ICS, but the cost is not living in geulah, right? Not living a geulah state, or personal geulah, etc. But could you share a little more, articulate a little more of what is the cost of gullus?
Sure,
so to speak, everybody at their own level. But what is the cost of staying in that gullus?
Yeah,
there could be levels of kedusha which are also gullus. So what is that cost?
Yeah.
It could look like resentment towards people in your community. It could look like disinterest in connecting with them and just caring for them. It could look like
burnout symptoms.
I don't want to use the word burnout, but that's what burnout looks like.
Why don't you want to use the word burnout?
No, I want to say what actually burnout looks like.
Oh, okay.
I'm giving
burnout. Yeah, burnout symptoms, I said.
Right, burnout,
yes.
Burnout,
yeah.
Disinterest.
It could look like, I can't say this enough. I mean, the twinkle in young people's eyes. I mean, when you meet an adult who has a chayas and you see it in their eyes, you know it. You might not even know who they are, but so this lack of, or this diminishment of chayas and simcha, but that's not like performative. I mean, we're part of this world where, I know what it looks like when shluchim dance around the room, and when shluchos dance around the room, like on a specific occasion that invites them to. But what does it look like on a Monday morning? And if there's a sparkle and a chayas missing, that's fine if it's an occasion. But if one finds themselves like carrying where it's kasha, where we just feel heavy. But it also doesn't have to look that bad or that severe. It could look like
also how you interact with another person
Correct.
with a generosity and with a smile and a curiosity and a care.
Yeah, I mean, we'll stop there. But what do you think of those expressions of geulah?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's you're painting a picture. And I'm sure there's more there, but that's a good
Well,
start.
what I don't want to come across here is that it's Avodah Pnimis is only for those who are, for example, experiencing burnout. Avodah
Okay.
Pnimis is for every human. We particularly believe as Yidden, and even more particularly believe that the Chassidus is a call to have an impact on our character, and it is the values through which we work the Avodah Pnimis. So, and then as shluchim, and if we're going to model Yiddishkeit, and we've become very good at performing and presenting, extraordinarily skilled. I mean, how many people say Chabad shluchim are so joyous and caring and amazing, right? I mean, we know what that's like. By the way, there's a whole section of Yidden that we don't have close relationships with. I don't know if it's for this podcast, but it's not everyone in the world says that about Chabad, which is just something to be mindful of, and wonder about and be curious about. But that it's also for because we get so used to performing, this is for everyone. That becomes our homeostasis. So we know what it looks like to put on an event, to get behind the podium, to say about Torah, to host people in our house, to lead a mommy and me. Like, we know that.
The motions.
We know the motions. We're really good at that.
Right.
What happens when it's quiet? What happens behind the doors? What happens when it's just our family? What happens when we're on our own? There's a lot of wonderful open space there for Avodah Pnimis. How is it that we want to go into our 30s and our 40s and our 50s? That does not depend on what people say about us. It does not depend on the compliments of the world. It doesn't matter how many people came to my Hanukkah event, right? And when we can model what growth in Yiddishkeit looks like, which we should if we're shluchim and shluchos, like on our own,
for ourselves,
then our community, I will take it as far as we will have a bigger impact. I will say it. We will have a bigger impact on each person that we interact with if we do our own Avodah Pnimis. Our homeostasis is also our success. Our gullus is also our success.
What do you mean by that? Our gullus is our success?
Meaning we
gullus is good.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
It's working.
We don't have to do Avodah Pnimis. Our programs are full. There's a wait list. We have a very successful school. Our Ganizi is thriving. I mean, so
things could be looking good.
Yeah. So I'm lifting it. It's not just for shluchim and shluchos who are experiencing burnout. It's also for shluchim and shluchos who have reached success in this kind of way.
Wow. Powerful.
So I'm curious to hear from you as somebody who's, working with shluchim and shluchos and hosted these podcasts. What are you hearing here from us? And how's it resonating with you?
It's a good question. Honestly, I think that, and I'm just speaking from my little knowledge, but I think that honestly, it's they use the term changing the conversation, because again, this is just from my perspective, but I think a lot of the conversation is functional, like, how do you make this work? How do you make, a lot of the podcast here is about fundraising. How do you make fundraising work? How do you make programming work? How do you make, an organization work? How do you make, family life and shluchus work? So it's, it's all like getting, building a system that works, right? That's functional, productive, succeeding. And one could get all that, but then they're still missing the neshama, you're calling over the Pnimis of, like, where am I in this, am I creating all this magnificent success, but internally still in a galus, right, in my own way, and everybody in their own way. And I think that this conversation is a powerful conversation to have of, every person, and every shliach looking inward and trying to grow as a human being, as a yid, as a chassid, in their own personal way, and how that impacts, shluchos and everything downstream from there. So that's just what I'm hearing. Maybe I'm off, but
No,
You're accurate.
you're accurate, and I will say that when you start from the inner, it goes downstream as you described it into your organization, into your systems, into your fundraising, into your programs. The only difference is you work is Avodah is derech Avodah ktsara, arucha ktsara, or ktsara arucha. In the functioning way, it's tzara arucha. It's tzara. You'll hear how to do the outcome in the fundraising. Follow these steps, or the systems follow these steps. But it's arucha because internally, the person themselves, it hasn't been impacted and it hasn't emerged from themselves. So it will dissipate.
Well, I'll just soften it up. It may. It's often a derech tzara v'arucha.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
What we're offering is a derech aruka. That means it's internal. It requires internal work. But once you've mastered this, the tzara, it's easy to apply it into fundraising, to apply it into programs, to apply it into systems. And what we're making the claim is that the derech of Chabad is aruka tzara. The first chiddush that the Alter Rebbe introduced in all of Chassidus, which is the Tanya, the Sharbal of the Tanya, the first big idea in the Sharbal of the Tanya is the idea of aruka ktsara. The few words before that is just introduction, is just introduction. The first concept, the concept of aruka ktsara, which lays the whole groundwork for everything that followed afterwards. And this is just a part of an approach that really puts an emphasis on that.
wow, beautiful, appropriate for bringing for Abdal Tavis.
Indeed.
I shared beautifully earlier. I'd love to hear from you, Peretz. What would you say? And I'm assuming Chanie's sharing from her work with shluchos. What would you say in the shliach's life? What does that look like? A person that goes from, like you described, golus to geulah. A person a shliach that goes from, just doing or not slowing down and not taking the time to do that in insourcing inner work. What does it look like to go from that to what you're describing in a real life example?
Sure. So it could be a shliach who Baruch Hashem has a beautiful maisit, one that others would love to serve and say that is incredible, and has a lot of people coming to his Chabad house, and he has shluchim working under him. But he finds that the way he interacts with the people in his community is one that is troubling for him. One, it could be that he is disinterested in engaging with them, just goes through their motions. Or it could be that there's an anxiety and tenseness when he engages with them, feeling a certain sense of an inner combativeness with them when they either complain, bring up issues that's troubling them. And he's been like this for years, where it's either been a state of disinterest or it's been a state of combativeness. But at the same time,
Fight or flight.
But at the same time, the shluchos is very successful. Like I said, beautiful model. And through this process, through learning Avodah Pnimis and through noticing without judging and then unpacking and then experimenting, he was able to learn the idea of actually approaching his interaction with the people in his community entirely in a different way, in a way where he was curious to hear what they have to say. He was learning what they were saying. So the interactions with them weren't boring because there was something to learn about. The interactions with them weren't confrontational because he was actually not, he was not looking to respond to what they were saying and tell them this is the way it should be, or here's what I think, but actually listening to what they're saying. And in that, learning about them, and in that, helping them find their voice and their perspective in this, and helping them in that way. And this it was entirely transformative in how it relates to perhaps one of the most important part of the, if not the most important part of shlichus, is how you relate, the relationship you have with your people, with the community.
Wow, that was a beautiful example. And I think it brings out a great point, which I think was brought up before, but underscores it, that it's not just about, the shliach or shluchos experience as the mashpia, but also as, what the level of impact you have is only as, as far as your own, where you are holding, right? So someone is in their own internal gullus, they could have a external impact, right? And the more, the inner growth one has, or, Avodah Pnimis, and more pnimistic, I guess, connection in their own self, that's the level of, pnimistic impact you could have. That's what I'm hearing, what you shared, well, at least one part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so, like the quote is, I think that different people claim it, but we can only take people as far as we've gone.
Right.
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 Yeah. There was something that you were mentioning that speaks to this idea also of, we mentioned earlier, productivity, programming. I'll add to that, like the doing. You said doing. We measure our success often by measurable outcomes. So,
Right.
mitzvah, neshek. Did they take home a menorah? Are
Budget.
they what? Budget. Are they coming for Shabbos? Did they enroll in camp, et cetera, et cetera? So,
Right. We measure the external.
That's right. And what Avodah Pnimis needs is curiosity and a derech harucha, and a little bit of humility, and also some fun, because Avodah Pnimis can't be Avodah Kasha. So
Right.
it's really, so that's part of the experimentation and curiosity, that we don't have to get it right. But often when we interact with a community member, or even a stranger on the street, we think we want to control the outcome. We want to determine the outcome. I won't necessarily use the word control, but we want to determine the outcome. And in fact, the shluchos is working through the way she's parenting. We want to control or determine the outcome of our children, right? And we mean very, very well. And when we couch it in a mitzvah, I mean, then it makes it holy to determine the outcome. And there is value in mitzvahs, right? There is value in mitzvahim, but it's not the only value. It's also the relationship. And if we want a yid to take a mitzvah that they've done, or a conversation that they have with you, and be curious for more, we need to be curious towards them. We bring out in others what we actually are bringing out. So while we think we're doing amazing things, I believe we can do more impactful things that will, I hope this is not cliche, but that will bring Mashiach. I mean, like a real growth and transformation of people's connection to Yiddishkeit and Hashem demands a relationship. It's a relational way of living. And we need to show more of that relationship when we interact with people. Our children, our spouse, we cannot determine the outcomes. We can invite them into a space if we stay inviting, but not just the way we think we're inviting. What does it mean to be curious about them, and not just surface level? Because a lot of shluchim and shluchos will be nodding their heads now and say, yeah, we know. We're inviting. Like, no, I'm asking, what's your presence like when you're speaking with someone? And we see it time and time again with colleagues, and feel like this rushness, this even in conversation, like people, a lot of shluchim and shluchos, and people. I'm not just about them. Know their response. If you know your response while I'm talking, you're actually not listening at all to me,
and you're not relating.
You're not curious. If you actually know what you're going to respond to, and then it's not a conversation actually. So I'm asking to reframe how we interact with people and our families and included.
Wow. Well, that is super powerful. The word that came to mind, you're talking about presence, like the quality of your presence, everybody's present at different levels, but like elevating that quality of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Just a thought that came to mind. I'm laughing because you're talking about if you know it, if while you're talking, and I like a thought came to mind.
Well, you're a host, so there's a certain like.
You need to prepare the next question.
Yeah, no, you have
Right.
It's a different kind of conversation. We're also aware that you're hosting, so.
Right. Yeah, but I try to be as present as I can. Um, but it's really a comment, not a question. But you're talking about levels of hashpah, levels of impact, and you mentioned Mashiach. So I was reading Mimer recently where there was talking about the chiddush of Chassidus in affecting the world. In the Kabbalah words, Chassidus reveals Pnimis at Mashiach, which is Chassidus came to start is Pnimis atik, right? That everything up until Chassidus, up until Mashiach is in some level external impact. Like you said, L'mayla Mata coming from from outside. This is to the purpose of the Alter Rebbe and Mashiach event. Ultimately is to reveal the true nature of everything. As being a part of Hashem. So I think that this conversation is really about like this is what Mashiach is, not just to have an external impact on somebody, but to really transform someone's life and connect them to the Eibishter, to Chassidus is like that is the point,
And for them to do it on their own. Ultimately, that's the only way for it to be done. We can't do it for them. They can't even be following our instructions. We're just facilitators or nourishers for their, and they do it. We inspire them. We may guide them. But we can't do it for them. We can't expect to do it for them. We can't even have them following our instructions. We have to help them figure it out on their own. And fundamentally, by the way, that's really what the Maimer Tetzaveh is about. Maimer Tetzaveh is Eis Yud through Yud Beis, Eis through Yud through Aleph is basically B'yichvelecha. You guys got to figure it out on your own, and do it on your own, and bring it to Moshe. Even if Moshe gives you everything, it's still not enough if you're not doing it on your own. And Avodah Pnimis is about doing it on your own.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, really powerful. I wanted to know to come back to something else that you said, Chanie, which was talking about the quality of presence in relation to community. And you reference it, but I'd love to go there for a minute. What does that look like, for shliach shluchot coming back to your own personal life, your family, you said with your children, with your spouse, with yourself? Like, what does that shift look like in that realm?
It's really a marvelous question that I don't have a well-rounded answer, because it's still an art and skill that I'm learning more over the years. And I notice it in myself, and I notice when someone has it or doesn't. There's a certain quiet that's necessary for presence, an inner quiet and a certain, even if it's a moment, but of an exhale and a calmness, so that you could actually notice, just notice where's your body, like from your top of your head to your feet. Also, what's going on around you? Who's in the room? What do they look like? So it depends if you're on your own or with someone else. Presence can, so that's what it looks like for an individual when they're on their own, and depending again the setting. What it looks like when someone is in conversation with someone is there's this depth of listening that is not about them at all. So if I'm present in someone else's conversation, I compare it to a midwife, where a good skilled midwife is in the room helping a woman birth, and yet that woman will tell you, if she's a really, really good midwife, that she was almost invisible and that she didn't take up space. And it wasn't about her. It was her skill was so extraordinary that she helped a woman give birth, but it was the woman birthing. And so a really skilled listener requires presence in ways where they help the other birth their own insights and understanding of themselves. Why did that person share that story with you? Like, why that story? Why now? What did they offer you? What are they actually not saying? A person with presence will actually be able to gift the other person with that kind of insight. And I know I use an extreme example in some ways for a midwife in a room, which is like a rare or like a miraculous holy moment. And yet we can learn to be present when we wake up in the morning, even those few moments of opening up our eyes, saying my da'ani, to how we greet our children, how we interact with our husbands, and how we go about our day. Like, what do we decide to do? Where in our calendar are we full? Where is there open space to practice presence? And it really invites the shluchim and shluchos in the noticing part. It's a real craving we're finding with women in particular, who in some ways have a greater intuition of about what is presence and what is not. And for the men, they crave it, but you're finding it more challenging in some ways.
Right. I just want to on what you on your
was that clear?
Yeah, I think that was beautiful. Thank you.
I just want to add is that when you're in a conversation with somebody and they walk away from conversation thinking not that you are smarter, but thinking that they're smarter because of what they shared with you and how you listened.
I think that's a measure.
That's a measure. They feel yes. Wow. Yes. Which shluchim, we find that they crave this idea of getting deeper awareness, not deeper, and actually deeper is not a broader awareness of what is happening in their shlichus, and I say personal, communal, organizational, broader and deeper. However, their challenge is that they carry an enormous burden of being of an organizational burden of leading organizations, be it the fundraising, be it the program, being the well-being of the organization, the participation. They carry that burden in a way that is an which creates the demands, creates a certain chaos that it creates an obstacle to that internal learning and internal growth. So we are learning about that in a deeper way, and we're also addressing that in the program that the program that we create for the shluchim.
We've tweaked it for the men, particularly because that was a learning that Peretz discovered over time, the unique challenges for the shluchim.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying it's the load and the burden of all the responsibilities that makes presence challenging. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Being present, being grounded.
and then being able to do Avodah Pnimis.
Yeah.
Like presence requires, I didn't say earlier, requires to let go of an expectation. Like when we're in conversation or when we're on our own or when we're hosting a program, like let go of an expectation of, okay, I want this person to say this and I want to make sure that this person is taken care of. We can be more present when we let go of our expectations. Shluchim carry a lot of day-to-day management, and also women. So, but the intuition and the craving and the desire for presence is so acute for them. They know it when they have it. They crave it when they don't. And in some ways, they'll put other things on hold sooner to get it. I think it's more difficult for the men. Again, we're generalizing.
Right.
But it isn't important to stick. We are finding that it so far has come up.
Differences.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. There's some differences that have surfaced for us over the last few years. Yeah.
Wow. So thanks for sharing that. So Peretz, can you share I guess from your perspective, with shluchim, like what you gave an example before of what that looks like, what this kind of work and growth looks like in communication with, community and relationship to community. What does it look like, in relationship with, one's family or self? What could you paint a little bit of a picture about that?
Sure. An example would be of a shliach who found it difficult for him to write a duch to the Rebbe. And at first he thought it was because, oh, you know what, I'm not organized. I'm not on top of my game. I have time management challenges. But as he dug deeper, he actually discovered that it was a result of a self-worth. He didn't believe that what he is doing is valuable and meaningful and sufficient. It wasn't sufficient. And that happened as a result of him noticing his duch process and then unpacking it, going deeper into it, and understanding that what's really about is sufficiency. And once he come to work that through and realize that actually what he is doing is sufficient, then his process of creating duchim became a lot easier. And he could bring himself to write a duch on a regular basis and ongoing, because his awareness of the sufficiency of his shlichus shifted. And that's something that only happened as a result of him going deeper and doing this personal Avodah Pnimis.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Meaning,
yeah, go ahead.
what I'm aware of is that the listener can hear and say, well, yeah, of course you're worth it. You're just you're a shliach. It doesn't matter how much you do. We hear that all the time. We hear that at the kinnos. We hear it when we learn a sicha or a maimer, like, look. But in the end, we're talking about an adult who has access to the same texts, who has heard this before. It won't work when someone else tells him,
Right.
Rabbi, you're worth
Right.
it. It won't work. He had to come on his own to understand that this is about worth. He had to come and understand on his own why and we can't gloss that over. That is a derech harucha process that demands Avodah Pnimis or invites Avodah Pnimis. And now I believe you shared this example with me, and it's over a year later, and it's still happening for him.
Right.
Meaning, we have found, when you ask the first question, the fruits, in a general sense, if a shliach or shlucha made a shift in their lives that they are still able to do, and or it has impacted other parts of their lives, that's success. And that's what we're finding with this derech harucha of Avodah Pnimis. It's not a quick fix, but they do matter. Sometimes those quick fixes are necessary, or like, tell me what to do, I will follow your instructions. Derech Katsara also has a value, but we like to limit that approach, especially as adults.
we like to live at the approach of a derech harucha, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Sorry.
like,
Sorry.
yeah,
Sorry. Okay.
yeah, like, it sounds like you have some really insightful, meaningful takeaways in your other podcasts for people to really work through family and fundraising, etc. And those are valuable.
Right.
Yeah. But so that's why I softened up the original
Mm-hmm.
But we can't only depend on them.
Not enough. Right.
And it's not enough.
And
at some point they dry up, or they're not transferable.
Or I will say that they become more effective.
Yeah, probably that is even better.
They become more effective and more useful when you first
when you know the tools of integration.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a better perspective.
Yes.
Beautiful. So perhaps I feel free to push back if I'm pressing too hard, but could you give an example in relation to family specifically, or shliach, like how this kind of process has helped him grow in his family dynamic
as a father or husband?
Husband.
You can use you as an
example. An example of someone who, in his relation to his children and to his spouse, would be quick to respond and to be demanding, and I even use perhaps even the word a little aggressive with his immediate family. And as a result of in this learning process, he learned how to notice when it happens, how it happens, and try to get a deeper understanding of what it's about, and implement and experimenting with new ways of interacting with his children or with his spouse that can soften how he relates to them and how he connects to them. One where these moments of losing himself decrease or go away.
Wow,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Meaning, so he didn't necessarily need like an anger management class, or
no.
Right.
No, he needed to also firstly pay attention to when it happens and how it happened. I don't want to underemphasize the importance of this skill of noticing without judging, and just really paying attention. Attention costs money, pays. You have to pay for it to really pay attention to what's going on and not judge. Judging means drawing conclusions or determinations that it's good, it's or bad. Because once that happens, you stop paying attention, and when you stop paying attention, you stop noticing. We stop noticing, realizing what is actually going on. So this person started noticing more, and as well, he started realizing more things, learning more, being curious about more, and that had the term used, a downstream effect on his unpacking, his understanding it deeper, and then what he experimented with, different ways of being with his children and being with his spouse.
Because I'm thinking, if I lose frustration at my kids, it's really easy for us to feel bad after, right? And try to make amends and whatever that looks like, and yet we do that. And yet, if we're invited then to notice without judging ourselves, it becomes it transforms that moment for us. So it helps us understand. So even if when we get angry again, the second time it happens, we continue to gather information. What time of day is it? Who is it with? What happened before? What's happening after? And patterns start emerging. And then a theme starts being understood, or themes. And then we go to understand that. So it really, this is what Avodah Pnimis could look like.
Wow, beautiful. So, and excuse me if I missed this before, but perhaps in your sharing, can you share a little more, like what did that person realize when you noticed that pattern of being patient or lashing out or aggression, like what did he notice? What was behind it? What was the key that helped him turn that around?
You're saying in the unpack, in the understanding what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. There's the note. Yeah, exactly. What was behind it?
Part of it was how he began his day, and what he was, how he things that he was doing in the early part of the day, and what he was not doing in the early part of the day. So he realized, and so he introduced new practices into his routine. And when you introduce these new practices into the routine, it has an effect on later on how he relates to other people in his family. That was a big one. And then another one was also, the more he noticed, the more he realized some of the things that was happening that was getting him to respond this way. There was more to it, which allowed him to not respond, because before he saw in a very narrow,
Right.
therefore
Right.
he responded in a certain way. But when you notice more, you see it more expansively, you see that it's not simply about, about them doing this and with this intention and with this outcome, but there's more to it. So then he was able to just not react that way, because he was learning about what was going on instead of judging what was going on.
Wow. The phrase that comes to mind, tell me if you understand it the same way, is like idea samacha chatzirifua, like knowing, understanding, like you said, it becoming more aware of what's happening is half the cure.
Yes, 51%.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And then it has to also then go to Misa.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and often the Misa comes quicker than, like we notice with Avodah Pnimis, the noticing takes weeks. Because again, the more you gather, but also it's not intuitive to not judge. And then when it becomes a place of curiosity and expansiveness, the shluchim and shluchos are like blown away by the experience of what it means to live like that. And that's one of the quickest, impactful moments of Avodah Pnimis, which is just really, really, really special to see. And that's often the most easily transferable, because everyone has tasted what a gift it is not to judge, even themselves, for certain, and certainly not other people. And then, what was my train of thought? What was the question you asked?
We're talking about knowing, awareness
Yeah,
is
knowing.
not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're finding that the Misa part, the doing part, takes up less time to actually start doing, because they've understood already what it's about, and they have a courage to experiment. It takes courage to do Avodah Pnimis. It really, really, really does. But they've already done the noticing, and they've done the hard work of unpacking. They've named it. They've articulated it. For some of them, it's like the elephant in the room or in their life that they just named, and they saw nothing happen. There's no lightning. Nothing fell apart. And then the doing comes quicker. They might not get it right the first time. That's part of the process.
Yes.
You're not supposed to get it right.
Ariko Ktsara. When it comes to the
Exactly.
doing is faster, right?
Exactly. And then those Ktsara moments, right? Derech Haruch Shehi, that it should be Ktsara, is that it starts to feel really nourishing when you start experimenting. Oops, okay, that wasn't good. Let me shift. It could be after a week, it could be after a month, it could be after a day, because they're going back to noticing and unpacking, and they have those skills now and this framework that they just carry. It becomes, we're trying to build a muscle over here. We're trying to build a skill.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. This was really amazing. Bemis, I could sit for another few hours, but my time is, I'm sure yours is as well, but maybe we'll have to have you again. I would my general reflection would be, and tell me if I totally missed the boat or I captured something, which is like the possibility that you're championing, that you're inviting, that you're teaching, is that no matter, like, this is true to any human being, but particularly shluchos that have such demanding lives, personal and communal, that no matter what the external circumstances are, stresses or whatnot, that a person could live and a shliach could live in a state of internal geulah, of not being freed from all those, forms of nefesh bahamis, all those things that pull us down. When a lot of people look outward to try to fix that. If I'm not feeling right inside, let me try to, fix everything on the outside, then I'll feel right. And to say that, nothing needs to change on the outside for you to be able to have geulah on the inside. By doing that, you could create geulah on the outside. I think that's super powerful. Did I capture something over there?
You sound worried that you didn't, but you did it.
Okay.
You did.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow.
I just want to
Really
add
beautiful.
I want
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
add one thing is that just that this Avodah Pnimis that we're discussing, and we're also bringing into our shlichus with our students. This is something that we're also learning with them and teaching them. So I just wanted to add that point and say that
Wow.
though we're doing it with shluchim and shluchos, it's also really important in our teaching students,
Wow.
which is a
Wow,
whole
beautiful.
nother conversation.
Right.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be in conversation with you and for giving us
For sure.
the space to share. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'll post a link to your website in the notes so anybody wants to learn more.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. We're actually inviting shluchim and shluchos. I mean, he's inviting the shluchim. I'm inviting the shluchos. We're starting new groups soon.
Cool.
We're starting the process.
Good timing.
That's right.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you again, Dave. I should give you all the blessings and kaiches to do your amazing work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Till next
You
time.
as well. See you too.
Amen. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Take care.